Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Welcome to my review for, I almost said Gojujer, for Kamen Rider Gavv, episode 47. So this was the continuation of last week's episode that had Shouma breaking into the Granite base, or the Granite world, with his brother, and then trying to have this plan going against the president, but ultimately didn't work out, and he got rescued by his friends. And I'm really happy that we're finally in a click where it feels like the finale arc, where it feels like each episode is feeding into each other, and it feels like we're building towards something, and it doesn't feel like we're doing weird filler plots, and it feels like there's actually stuff to resolve. I still think there's some missed opportunities, and I have a lot to say about the villains, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit here, obviously, and probably in the following weeks, but I feel like I'm going to save a lot of what I want to say for the series review, because I want to see how it comes together and kind of reflect back on everything and see how it all worked out, because I think there's a lot of missed opportunities with the villains. We do start off, though, with kind of basically everyone saying, Shouma, what the hell, why'd you do that? And he's like, well, Neville had a plan. He seemed pretty sincere, which is going to be important. And you have this brief little subplot of Hanto flying off the handle about how could you trust Neville, which obviously is a reaction to his involvement with the death of his boss or whatever. But it was just like this little mini microcosm of lots of arcs Hanto's had throughout the series, where the nice thing about Hanto is he is level-headed, but he will fly off the handle initially. But like I've mentioned many times in the series, something refreshing about him is most Toku characters would just become an unreasonable hothead for like 15, 20 episodes or something like that. Maybe not that many, but you know what I mean. But regardless, he's actually behaved like a human being compared to most Toku characters in his situation. But it was just a weird little subplot, because it was kind of even acknowledging Loki as like, are you doing this again, where you fly off the handle and then realize once you've calmed down that it's fine? And I don't know, I just thought that was weird. Like, it was a nice little moment that kind of showed how they had all grown and that Loki knew him so well with that, but it was just, I just felt like it wasn't needed. I don't know why it was there. Maybe it's something that's going to pay off that I just can't see or something. I don't know. Regardless, though, Neville got caught, and he's like, okay, you're going to kill me now or whatever. He's like, no, I still need you to do this plan, and the plan is to take those little black gachizos and use them to do, like, the Leap to Your Doom thing using Lakia's ability like they did. So I was thinking to the Leap to Your Doom scene again. Leap to Your Doom. Leap to Your Doom, coming in theaters, or Doom Part 3, coming in theaters. I think next year, is it 2026? I don't know. Regardless, fear's the mind killer. So, also, it was reminding me, like, them talking about kind of herding the humans like food, cattle and stuff. It reminded me of Season 7 of Supernatural, where they were having the turducken sandwiches that made the humans docile so the Leviathan could eat them. Anyway, shout out to anyone that gets that. But if you're worried about that, just get some borax, it's fine. Anyway, so yeah, that was finale feeling stuff. And I feel like with this episode and with the fight against the president, it was the first time I've really felt the president as a threat. I think when he came up initially, I kind of saw him as a villain for a mini arc, and I did not expect him to stay around this long, so I'm finally seeing him as a bigger threat and as more of a villain. Again, I still have some disappointment about how him and Suga and the Stomach family was all shuffled around and handled, but I want to save more of that when I see how it all shakes out. But speaking of Neville, so he had this plan here where basically he was going to blow up all of the gachizos and ruin the president's plan, but then the president turned it on him and blew up Neville, which was kind of a nice twist that kind of made him seem like more of a threat. And it was just a nice little set of twists there in general, of showing that Neville wasn't being complacent and that the president was ahead of him and made him seem like a stronger villain. But then you have this whole thing with Shouma, where he was actually kind of worried about Neville, but then Neville attacks him to, self-preservation. And I don't know, I felt like they were doing possibly the very first hints at any sort of redemption in this. And I don't know, it just feels too little too late, and it feels like the only reason Shouma was invested in Neville was because he felt sincere about wanting to stop the president, but it doesn't feel like Neville's motivations are noble in the sense that he's not like, man, we've lost our way, we need to kill the president and reform Granite Society. He's like, no, we want the Stomach family back on top. So I don't know, I feel like there's something there, and I wish it would have been started earlier. I think, now that Neville's gone, we don't know how that would have played out or how that could play out if he was still around. But I'll be curious to see how this ends and how I feel about that and what I end up having to say about the dynamics of that. Because, like I've mentioned numerous times to almost sickening amount, I've always found it interesting that this series didn't seem interested in redeeming any members of the family. And now here at the end, we've been humanizing him, but it's just weirder than usual. And I forgot to mention that Shouma does find out Longo's alive, so that's at least an interesting beat going on there. But yeah, I don't know. It just felt like a really rushed, like where he was so worried about Neville, where in the past he's blown up them for much less. And not like that he was going to blow up Neville when he first saw him. It just felt like, really, we're trying to do this redemption arc now? And like I said, I could see there's something there, but if it was something that needed to be done, it should have been started a while back. Like, especially with how long the presidents had been in there. that it could have been a longer running arc about him kind of having to form a begrudging allyship. I was gonna say allyship. Alliance. There we go. A begrudging alliance with Neville or maybe multiple members of the family, which could have maybe led to them bonding and then maybe gone for a redemption thing. I wouldn't have been mad at that. Like, honestly, so long as they didn't redeem the entire family by the end of the series, I would have been okay with at least one of them being humanized. Mainly because it feels kind of awful that just Shoma's entire family would hate him. I'm like, yeah, can't get one of them to like him? Also, there was kind of an interesting, nice beat where Neb felt angry and jealous about the fact that even though they made the black Gavv for him, he just wound up turning to the original red Gavv. So that'll probably pay off soon. I don't remember from the preview they're fighting Neb, but I think that'll pay off into some fight, obviously, between the two of them later. So yeah, overall, solid episode. I'm glad we're getting into more of a finale momentum. I'm eager to see how this series ends. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, Dawson Ryder, signing out.